The heart of a mechanical watch is called the escapement. It's a tiny, intricate mechanism that controls the release of energy, creating the steady, rhythmic beat, the tick-tock, that measures the passage of time. For 12 years, I had been the escapement of the Vance Watch Company. I was Elara Vance, 49 years old, and the steady, quiet rhythm of my life was set by the ticking of the masterpieces we created in our small, historic workshop in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. This workshop was my grandfather's legacy. Alistair Vance wasn't just a businessman, he was a horological artist. His handcrafted timepieces were legends among collectors. When he passed away, he left the business to his only son, my father, Richard. But my father was a salesman, not a creator. He understood how to sell a watch, but not how to make one. The business languished, its reputation fading. I came home. I left my position as a chief restorer at a prestigious auction house in Geneva, Switzerland, and brought my skills back to the dusty workshop of my childhood. I didn't just save the company, I revived its soul. I spent a decade mastering my grandfather's techniques, training a new generation of artisans, and designing my own award-winning collections that brought the Vance name back to prominence. Now, seated at my father's polished mahogany dining table for what he had ominously called a pivotal family dinner, I felt the precise, steady rhythm of my own heart begin to falter. My father sat at the head of the table, looking uncharacteristically pleased. My younger brother, Leo, sat across from me, practically vibrating with the kind of smug energy that always preceded one of his game-changing ideas. "Elara," my father began, raising his glass of expensive scotch. "Your dedication to the craft has been commendable. You've kept your grandfather's traditions alive." The word, traditions, was spoken with a faint, dismissive air that immediately put me on guard. Leo leaned forward, unable to contain himself. "But traditions don't build an empire, Elara. The Vance name is a sleeping giant. While you've been making a handful of exquisites and very expensive watches for a few old collectors, I've been building a future. I've secured a majority stake investment from an incredible partner, a private equity firm called Momentum Ventures," he announced, his chest puffing out. "We are launching a new global brand, Vance Legacy." He slid a glossy marketing brochure across the table. I picked it up. It featured sleek, minimalist watches with cheap quartz movements, a far cry from our intricate mechanical art. The Vance name was printed in a trendy, soulless font. The tagline read, "A timeless name for a modern moment." "We're going to democratize the Vance brand," Leo continued, his voice full of messianic fervor. "Create a high-quality, accessible timepiece for the millennial and Gen Z market. Online sales, influencer marketing, a global supply chain. This is the future?" I felt a wave of nausea. "You're going to put our family name on a cheap, mass-produced product. This isn't democracy, Leo, it's sacrilege. Grandfather would be horrified." "Your grandfather was a brilliant artist, but a terrible businessman," my father said coolly. "He was content to be a big fish in a small pond. Leo is thinking bigger. And as the new CEO of the reorganized Vance Watch Company, he will have the resources to succeed." The words hit me one by one, like tiny, precise hammer blows against a nerve. "New CEO, reorganized company. And the workshop?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Or artisans?" "My work. The bespoke workshop is a financial drain," Leo said with a shrug. "It's a passion project, not a viable business model. We'll be winding down operations over the next 6 months. The artisans will be given generous severance packages, of course." He looked at me, a flicker of what might have been pity in his eyes. "And for you, Elara, we've created a new role. You will be the brand ambassador and head of archives. It's a ceremonial position, mostly. You can travel, attend watch fairs, talk about the heritage of the brand. Less stress. More free time." They were putting me in a museum, a living relic to be trotted out to give their cheap brand a veneer of authenticity. They were taking my life's work, my passion, my very identity, and turning me into a marketing gimmick. Have you ever had the soul of your work ripped out and replaced with a cheap imitation? Have you been told your passion was just a hobby standing in the way of real business? If this story is already making you feel the injustice, please show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. Your voice matters, and it helps us share these crucial stories of integrity and resilience. And please, hit that notification bell, Because you won't want to miss the moment the clock strikes midnight on their plans. I looked from my father's resolute face to my brother's triumphant one. This had been planned for months, behind my back. They had used my hard work to make the Vance name valuable again, only to sell it to the highest bidder. I didn't explode. A strange, glacial calm settled over me. I placed the glossy brochure down on the table. I see, I said. My voice was as quiet and steady as the ticking of our finest chronometer. I rose from the table. If you'll excuse me, I have some work to finish in the workshop. I walked out, leaving them in the wake of my unnerving composure. They had expected a fight, tears, pleas. They had not expected this quiet dignity. They mistook my silence for defeat. They had forgotten that my grandfather was a man who understood intricate mechanics and hidden springs. And years ago, on his deathbed, he had given me a small, heavy, velvet-wrapped box. "Don't open this until the day you feel they no longer see the soul in the machine," he had whispered. It's my final escapement. I had never understood what he meant, until now. The end of part 1. Type continue for part 2 and part 20. The grandfather's escapement, the days following the dinner were a study in polite, soul-crushing efficiency. Leo moved into my grandfather's old office, a space I had kept as a shrine, and immediately started talking about knocking down walls for a more open, collaborative workspace. Men in suits from Momentum Ventures, young, aggressive men who wore smartwatches, toured the workshop. They looked at my artisans, some of whom had worked there for 40 years, with the cold curiosity one might reserve for blacksmiths at a historical reenactment. My father and Leo treated me with a new, careful deference. They included me in meetings where my opinion was clearly not wanted, and praised my invaluable historical knowledge. They were handling me, trying to ensure a smooth transition of power before I was gently moved into my gilded cage as brand ambassador. I played along. I answered their questions. I nodded. I was a ghost in my own workshop, my silence growing more unnerving to them with each passing day. They couldn't understand why I wasn't fighting back, and their uncertainty was a small, satisfying victory. My nights were my own. While they slept, I went to my small apartment above the workshop, and from its hiding place in my personal safe, I took out the velvet box my grandfather had given me. It was heavy, made of dark, polished mahogany. For 12 years I had resisted the urge to open it, respecting his wishes. Now, the time had come. My fingers trembled slightly as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded blue silk, was not a watch. It was an old, ornate brass key in a thick, sealed envelope made of heavy parchment. On the front, in my grandfather's elegant, spidery script, it said, "For Elara." I opened the letter first. "My dearest Elara," it began. "If you are reading this, then my fears have come to pass. Your father is a good man, but he is a merchant, not a guardian. Your brother has a merchant's ambition, but not his heart. They see our name as a commodity. You, my child, are the only one who sees it as a creed. I have always known this day might come. A true craftsman must protect his work not only with his hands, but with his mind. The key in this box is for my private safe, hidden behind the portrait of your grandmother in my old office. Inside, you will find the documents that separate the body of our company from its soul. Use them wisely. A watch's purpose is to keep true time, and sometimes, truth must be fought for. You are the last true Vance watchmaker. Make me proud. Your loving grandfather, Alistair." Tears streamed down my face, blurring the ink. He had known. He had seen the fault lines in his own family and had prepared for this very moment. The next night, long after Leo and his new corporate cronies had left, I let myself into my grandfather's office. Leo had already started to change it, replacing the old leather chairs with sleek, modern ones. It felt like a desecration. I walked to the oil portrait of my grandmother, her kind eyes seeming to watch me. I felt along the edge of the heavy gilt frame until my fingers found a small, hidden latch. With a soft click, the portrait swung forward, revealing the dark steel door of a wall safe. The brass key slid into the lock and turned smoothly. Inside was a single, thick leather portfolio. The gold lettering on the front read, "The Vance Horological Trust." I took it back to my apartment and, with a pot of strong black coffee, I began to read. What my grandfather had done was an act of quiet, legal genius. Years before his death, as he saw the direction my father and brother were heading, he had performed a precise legal separation. He had created an irrevocable trust. The physical assets of the business. The workshop building, the machinery, the retail storefront, the existing inventory, remained the property of the Vance Watch Company LLC. However, he had legally transferred the most valuable assets of all into the trust. The trust's sole holdings were first, the exclusive, worldwide, and perpetual ownership of the Vance brand name and trademark itself. Second, the copyrights and design patents to all of his original, iconic watch designs, including the legendary Alastair chronograph and the Eleanor tourbillon. The trust's charter was a beautiful piece of legal poetry. It stated that the Vance name and designs could only be used for handcrafted, mechanical timepieces produced in the Lancaster workshop, maintaining a standard of quality to be judged by the trust's sole governing authority. And the final, beautiful, lethal clause upon his death, the sole, lifelong, and absolute trustee of the Vance Horological Trust was to be his granddaughter, Elara Vance. My father and Leo had sold a majority stake in a company that owned a building and some machines. They had licensed a brand name that they had absolutely no legal right to use. Every single Vance legacy watch they were planning to produce would be an act of trademark and copyright infringement. I sat back, the weight of the documents in my lap. The ticking of the grandfather clock in my living room sounded like a countdown. My grandfather hadn't left me a weapon. He had left me the entire arsenal. My first call was to my grandfather's old lawyer in Philadelphia, a man named Arthur Kensington, now semi-retired but as sharp as a diamond cutter. "Mr. Kensington, it's Elara Vance." "Elara," he said, his voice a gravelly rumble. I was expecting this call. Not so soon perhaps, but I was expecting it. Let me guess. The merchants have finally tried to sell the temple. I explained the deal with Momentum Ventures. I could hear him chuckling on the other end of the line. Alastair was a brilliant man, he said. He knew his son and grandson saw his life's work as a pile of bricks, not a cathedral. The trust is unassailable, Elara. They have sold them a key to an empty house. What is your command? I want to wait, I said, a cold, clear strategy forming in my mind. I want them to sign the final papers. I want Momentum Ventures to transfer the investment funds. I want Leo to hold his press conference and announce his glorious new brand to the world. I want him to feel the crown on his head. And then, I want to pull the throne out from under him. Ah, Kensington said with deep satisfaction. A public execution. Dramatic. Alastair would have approved. We will prepare the necessary injunctions and cease and desist orders. You just give the signal. For the next 2 months, I played the part of the forgotten artisan. I watched as millions of dollars from Momentum Ventures flowed into the company's accounts. I watched as Leo hired a flashy marketing firm and began production on the first run of Vance Legacy watches at a factory in China. I watched as they planned a lavish launch party at a trendy art gallery in New York City to unveil the brand to the world. The night before the launch, my father came to the workshop. He seemed almost apologetic. "Elara," he said, "I know this has been hard, but Leo is on the verge of something truly massive. This will make our family's name known around the world." "The Vance name is already known around the world, Dad," I said quietly. "It's known for quality, for artistry, for integrity. The question is, what will it be known for tomorrow?" He didn't have an answer. End of part 2. Type, continue. For part 3, the unwinding the launch party for Vance Legacy was held in a stark, minimalist art gallery in Soho, a place where celebrity and capital converged. The room was packed with tech investors, fashion influencers, and journalists, all sipping champagne and admiring the slick, soulless watches displayed in glowing glass cases. A massive screen behind a stage cycled through images of my grandfather at his workbench, his legacy being used as a backdrop for its own betrayal. I was there, an anonymous figure in a simple dark dress, standing near the back. My lawyer, Arthur Kensington, stood beside me, looking less like a lawyer and more like a wise old owl observing the folly of mice. At 8 p.m., the lights dimmed. Leo walked onto the stage to a professionally engineered crescendo of upbeat music. He looked like he was on top of the world. The CEO of Momentum Ventures, a slick, aggressive man named Julian Croft, stood beside him, beaming. "Tonight, we are not just launching a watch," Croft announced into the microphone. "We are launching a movement. We are taking 100 years of heritage and making it accessible for a new generation. Thanks to the vision of the new CEO of the Vance Watch Company, Leo Vance. Leo stepped forward, soaking in the applause. "Thank you, Julian," he said, his voice resonating with false sincerity. "My grandfather was a great artist, but he believed his art was only for a select few. I believe his legacy belongs to everyone. With our new Vance Legacy line using his iconic Alastair case design, we are a—" He never got to finish the sentence. At that moment, two court officers in formal attire entered the room. They moved with a calm, implacable purpose, parting the sea of beautiful people as they walked directly to the stage. One served a thick legal envelope to Julian Croft. The other served one to my brother. A confused, excited buzz went through the crowd. Was this part of the show? Then, Mr. Kensington stepped forward. He didn't need a stage or a spotlight. His presence alone commanded attention. "Good evening," he said, his voice rumbling through the silent gallery. "My name is Arthur Kensington. I am the legal counsel for the Vance Horological Trust. I have been asked by the trustee to make a brief clarifying statement." All eyes were now on him. Leo and Croft stood frozen on the stage, staring at the documents in their hands. The Vance, brand name, trademark, and all associated designs, including the Alastair design, Mr. Kensington announced, his voice slow and deliberate, "Here the exclusive intellectual property of the trust. The Vance Watch Company LLC, with whom Momentum Ventures has partnered, has no legal right to use, license, or reproduce them. This entire Vance Legacy product line constitutes a massive and willful infringement of the trust's copyrights and trademarks." You could have heard a pin drop. The influencers had stopped posing for selfies and were now live, streaming, their faces alight with the thrill of a public disaster. "The documents just served," Kensington continued, gesturing toward the stage, "here a temporary restraining order and a cease and desist demand, legally barring any further marketing or sale of these infringing products, a lawsuit seeking significant damages, and the immediate recall of all manufactured goods will be filed in federal court at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The trust will defend its legacy with the full force of the law. Thank you." He turned and looked directly at me at the back of the room, and gave me a barely perceptible wink. The room erupted. Julian Croft was screaming into his phone, his face a mask of fury. My brother looked like he had been turned to stone, his moment of triumph transformed into a public pillory. I saw my father near the front, his face ashen, looking utterly lost. I didn't stay to watch the chaos unfold. My work was done. I slipped out a side door and into a waiting taxi, the sounds of the implosion fading behind me. My grandfather had built his legacy on precision and perfect timing. And tonight, I had honored him. End of Part 3. Type continue. For Part 4, the conclusion. The Part 40 setting a new time, the explosion in New York sent shockwaves all the way back to Lancaster. The story was a business nightmare and a PR catastrophe. Momentum Ventures, facing a costly and unwinnable legal battle, immediately turned on my father and brother. Their multi-million-dollar investment was frozen, and their own lawyers began preparing a massive lawsuit against the Vance Watch Company LLC for fraud and gross misrepresentation. 2 days later, my father and Leo came to me, not to the workshop, not to my apartment. They appeared at the gate of the workshop like refugees seeking asylum. They looked haggard, defeated, and for the first time, truly afraid. I met them in my grandfather's office, now my office. I sat behind his old oak desk. They took the chairs opposite me, the same chairs where they had once sat to plan my ousting. "They're going to destroy us, Elara," my father said, his voice hollow. "The lawsuit from Momentum. They want their investment back, plus damages. We'll lose everything. The house, the company, all of it." "The company, as you call it, is nothing but a building and some old machines," I said, my voice even. "Its only real value was the name, and you never owned it. You tried to sell a ghost." "What do you want?" Leo whispered, all his arrogance gone, replaced by a raw, desperate fear. "You want us to beg. Is that it?" I looked at my brother, at the man who had been so eager to erase me, and I felt a flicker of something close to pity. He wasn't a monster. He was just a weak man who had mistaken ambition for ability. "Begging is unnecessary," I said. "But restitution is not. I am the only person who can make this go away. I, as the trustee, am the only one Momentum Ventures will negotiate with. I am willing to do that. But it will be on my terms." I pushed a document, drafted by Mr. Kensington, across the desk. "This is a transfer of ownership agreement. You, father, and you, Leo, will sign over your entire collective ownership of the Vance Watch Company LLC to me. for the sum of $1. In return, I will negotiate a settlement with Momentum Ventures. A settlement? How? My father asked. The trust will grant Momentum Ventures a one-time, limited license to sell off the existing inventory of the Vance Legacy watches they have already produced, I explained. They can sell them under a different, non-Vance brand name. It will allow them to recoup most of their initial production cost and avoid a total loss. In exchange, they will drop all lawsuits against you and the LLC. It's a clean break for everyone. They stared at me, comprehending the totality of my victory. I was not only taking the company, but I was also orchestrating the solution that would save them from ruin. And us? My father asked. You will retire, father. The LLC, which I will now own, will provide you with a lifetime pension. You will live comfortably, but you will have no say, no role, no part in this business ever again. I turned to Leo. You will walk away. There is no job, no severance. The money Momentum Ventures invested is now their problem to solve. You will leave Lancaster and you will not use the Vance name in any future business venture. Your legacy is over. There was a long, heavy silence. Then, my father picked up the pen and signed. He had lost, and he knew it. Leo, after a moment of trembling hesitation, did the same. 1 year later, the workshop was more alive than ever. The sign outside no longer said, Vance Watch Company. It now read, Vance and Daughter, Bespoke Timepieces. The deal with Momentum Ventures went through as I had planned. The cheap watches vanished into the gray market, and the firm disappeared from our lives. The Vance Watch Company LLC, now my sole property, owned the building and the machines. And the Vance Horological Trust, also under my sole control, owned the brand and the designs. The body and soul were finally, and forever, united. I used the newfound stability to innovate in the way my grandfather would have. I launched a new line of women's mechanical watches based on my own designs, which were met with critical acclaim. And I started the Alastair Vance Apprenticeship Program, taking on 2 talented young watchmakers to ensure the craft would be passed down to another generation. My father lived his quiet life of retirement. We found a new, respectful distance. He would sometimes visit the workshop, not as a boss, but as a visitor, watching the artisans work with a look of quiet awe, as if seeing the magic in it for the first time. Leo, as far as I knew, was in California, trying to find his footing. I wished him no ill will, but our paths would never cross again. One evening, I sat at my grandfather's workbench, the same one he had used for 50 years. In my hands was a new movement I was designing, its tiny gears and springs gleaming under the lamplight. The workshop was quiet, filled with the steady, reassuring ticking of dozens of clocks and watches, all beating in their own perfect time. At our family dinner, they had tried to tell me my time was up. They didn't realize that they were merely cogs in a much grander design, a design laid out by a master watchmaker long ago. They had tried to steal a legacy, but a true legacy isn't something that can be stolen. It must be earned, understood, and protected. And now, the future of the Vance name was finally in the right hands. It was my time. If this story of precision, betrayal, and ultimate justice resonated with you, please hit the like button, share it with anyone who values true craftsmanship, and subscribe to our channel. Every life has its own intricate design, and every story of perseverance deserves to be told. What is the legacy you are working to protect? Let us know in the comments below. Your story is a valuable part of our collection. And please, don't forget to ring that notification bell, so you are always on time for our next story. Thank you for listening.